all fired up.
I'm excited to hear you guys' thoughts on these things.
We got to move on before I completely emotionally and mentally unravel here. All right, welcome back to another episode of Roundball Radio, where we give you the takes you didn't ask for on basketball, pop culture, and everything else in between. I am your host today, JT Cunningham, and I am joined by my two co-hosts, Dylan Gorman and Sam Handler. What's up, guys?
What's going on, JT? I'm excited to be back, talk a little basketball. I always look forward now to these days, like each Sunday, every two weeks. It kind of is a nice break from the day-to-day grind, talking some basketball. Looking forward to it. Beautiful day out in Denver today. I don't know what it's like back in Minnesota, but I'll tell you what, these mild winters in Denver, I'm starting to really like. I don't know where work or school or whatever is going to take me in the future, but I have a strong feeling I won't be back in Minnesota.
That's too bad. I miss you here.
But yeah, I mean, what's the weather like there today, JT?
Well, it's probably 5 degrees, but the sun's shining, so.
Last snow last night too. I was driving back in a winter storm. Wasn't particularly fun, but got through it. Didn't die. I
haven't had a day yet this winter where I could not have gone outside in just a sweatshirt and feel comfortable. Just great. So we're in mid-January, almost to the end of January. In Minnesota, that's unheard of. So I'm really enjoying these mild winters, and like I said, I'm looking forward to talking some basketball.
All right. Well, let's do it. Although before we do that, and I think so, our schedule for the day, we're going to talk about whether or not we're buying or selling some early season trends. But before that, we're going to head back into our all fired up segment where we let you guys know about one thing that got us all riled up since we last talked. And it doesn't have to be about basketball. It can be about absolutely anything. It can be about something at work, something in the news, or just a personal pet peeve of ours. But let's get it started. So, Sam, what do you got for us this week?
Oh, man. All right. I think I first need to preface this by saying I do not have a gambling problem, at least not yet.
I think acceptance is the first step, so you're not there yet, I guess.
So, all right. So I had something else planned, but after last night, this got me absolutely fired up. So I had to switch it to this because it was only the right thing to do. So I had basically what happened was I had 3 same game parlays yesterday, which is basically, actually one of them wasn't a same game parlay, but 2 same game parlays where you can parlay the same game. And then I had a third one, which was 5 different games. And then I was just picking a player prop for each one of them. And so the first one of the day, I had a same game parlay on the Timberwolves Pelicans game, and I hit all legs of that parlay except for one, which was Malik Beasley. I had him at over 16.5 points. He finished with 16 points. So right off the day, I lost. It was $10 to win $80. So that was kind of all right, whatever. I got 2 more. I'll see if I can kind of have a better showing the rest of the night and win some money. My other one was the Miami Heat Brooklyn Nets game last night. I think it was the Nets Heat, but I had another 6-leg parlay, hit on every single one of them except for Goran Dragic over 1.5 3. He shot 0 for 5 from downtown, and the Heat put up 123 points or something along those lines. Dragic had 0 threes in. So that I was oh man, that was $9 to win 119. So it would have been a nice hit. But my big one of the night was $25 to win 383. I had a 5-leg parlay. Each of my first 4 just absolutely smashed. Curry over 5.5 assists. He had that in the first half. I had Durant over 2.5 threes against a poor Miami defense when guarding the 3-point. They gave up the second most. He got that. I had DeAndre Ayton over like 16 points. He had like 15 in the third quarter, so he had a few more in the fourth to get over that. And then I had one more that was a smash spot. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But the last one of the night was Luka Doncic over 8.5 assists. He had 8 assists through 3 quarters, and then the Mavs were down to the Rockets by 20 going into the fourth quarter, and Rick Carlisle decided just to bench Doncic for the whole fourth quarter, which is, I think, just absolutely absurd because 20, well, it's a lot of points to overcome. It's not impossible to overcome. And so he didn't play the whole fourth quarter, which cost me the $383. I got my $25 back because of like the promotion that they run. And I hit all the other legs except for one. So I get my 25 back, but it just absolutely fired me up last night. Like, and that's probably why, Dylan, you saw my whoop. I only got 4 hours of sleep, went to bed, just fired up. And so this morning, woke up, new day. We got football. We got a full slate of NBA games. You better believe I'm going to try to win that money back today. But yeah, that's what got me all fired up yesterday. I was really bummed out by that.
Sam, you definitely should have prefaced don't have a gambling problem because it makes you you sound like you have a gambling problem.
You know it's a bad night when, and I never do this, but you know it's a bad night when you have to go back to your bank account to see how much you've been betting over. Because
never go to the ATM, Sam.
Because over the last week, I probably had 10 same game parlays that I missed by one leg. So I was like, oh my gosh, how much money have I bet? How much money have I left on the table? So I just went back and I did crunched some numbers from the beginning of the year, looked at my like deposits and withdrawals within the sports book. And I'm actually, because of a big hit that I had in daily fantasy at the end of December or like early January, week 17 of the NFL season, I'm only this year down $50. I was absolutely surprised by that. So I'm not bummed out by that at all. But we'll see how it plays forward.
Do you ever think that all this grind isn't worth it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've had that thought many times, but it's one of those things where it just takes one time for it to be worth it. Like, at least in the daily fantasy part of it, if you have like one big hit, it's like in 50 grand, that can, supplement so much of like your income for like the rest of the year in betting. So, I mean, obviously I haven't had a hit like that, but if the fact that I'm not losing a lot of money while still being able to have an opportunity to win, is why I keep kind of playing. So, and I'm playing within my means. So I'm not like going outside of my means. I'm doing all right financially. So if my mom's listening to this, don't have to worry.
So I only got one thing before we move on to Dylan's all fired up. So first, on the fact that you're not hitting on one of these legs of the parlays, it's almost like Vegas knows what they're doing when they're setting the over-unders. Almost. That's what it's like. And the last thing I just want to leave us with is 1-800-522-4700, which is the National Gambling Hotline. So if you need help, give it a call.
I do see that number every time I log in, so well aware. Thank you.
All right, Don, what do you got?
So this is really specific, and it's, if anybody doesn't watch NBA, they probably won't notice, but I'm all fired up about the alternate camera angles during the NBA national broadcasts. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but it seems like the different camera angles have been popping up more and more during national games, and I just hate it, man. It's just so discombobulating. It's you can't get the flow to the game, and it used to happen maybe like once a quarter, for like one possession, and now it's happening at least every quarter, and like for 5 or 6 possessions in a row. And it kind of started during the bubble because they didn't have fans, so they had like that camera that like went parallel with the players for a possession at a time, and they kept upping it. So then there's like 2-minute stretches where you couldn't see anything during the game. I mean, I like that you can see like how like small a court is and like how big the players are, but when you're trying to like watch a game and get the flow and get like do research on it, it totally, you can't see anything. And to me, it fired me up every time. I yell at Meg, like, why the hell are they doing that at every single time? And then it seems to always go on for too long. And I mean, it seems like a small thing, but the aesthetic to the game always diminishes to me when they do that angle, and it's been increasing, and I can't stand it.
See, I kind of like it.
Do you like the multiple, like for multiple possessions? Like I like it for like a possession or two, but they've been doing it for like minutes at a time, and it's like you can't see anything.
Yeah, minutes at a time would be kind of disorienting, but I do like getting sort of the courtside view, so you can kind of like get a feel for how big and how athletic those guys are and how fast that game is moving. But yeah, I could see if it's minutes at a time, I don't think I'd like it either, but I like the change-up.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like to see obviously how little space there is, how big these guys are, how like incredible what they're doing. But when it's at like minutes at a time, and then they were switching from like sideline to above view to like angles in like the corner, you just can't get a feel for the game, and you can't see any of the players. So there's sometimes when I like to watch like one individual player, for possessions at a time, and that just ruins it. I can't do that. So it's just, to me, I don't like it.
Well, maybe Meg can fix it for you.
I'll call into the commish. I'll talk to Silver and see what we can do about that.
Yeah, good luck, bud. All right.
What do you got, JT?
Yeah, my all fired up. So I had something different, and then I also changed directions last night because of a conversation that we had. So as I previewed, our topic for today is buying and selling early season trends, and we're not going to end up talking about the specific player, but I couldn't help be annoyed by Dylan's commentary on him. And so first, Dylan, I just want to ask you what you think about Chris Paul.
Chris Paul?
Yeah.
Oh, I love Chris Paul.
You love Chris Paul.
Watch out, Dylan. This is a trap.
Well, he's going to say something about Levine, I guarantee. But anyways, yeah, Chris Paul is a great player, winning player.
Great player, great winning player, great basketball mind, like the president of the Players Association. And I'm going to put up a tweet here where Chris Paul says Zach LaVine nice as hell. And that's I think all that has to be said on this topic, because Dylan hates Zach LaVine because some BS analytics, and all you have to do is watch Zach LaVine to know that he's an absolute killer. He's one of the best offensive talents in the game, and Chris Paul knows it, I know it, and Dylan doesn't know it, and it pisses me off.
Yo, dude, I've gone to so many Timberwolves games. Like, it's not the analytics. I see him play. He exists in a vacuum to the rest of like the team, and that's why I don't like him. He doesn't make anybody better, and he scores in a vacuum. So that's just, I know you love him, so I don't mean to.
See, here's the thing: if he's scoring in a vacuum, those points still count in the scoreboard for the rest of the team. So
yeah, except they lose every game.
They're like 7-8 right now, and you know what? You hammered the under on the Bulls. You would not be winning that bet right now.
Aren't they 6-9?
No, they might have lost. They might be 7-9 now after last night. I guess they lost to the Lakers, but
all right, yeah, they're 7-9. But
well, you know what? They're
slightly better than I thought.
Exactly.
But
so, and Zach LaVine's fantastic, and Chris Paul knows it, and I don't want to hear anything else because this is my all fired up.
All right. Fair enough.
JT, if I knew you could put up tweets and things like that, I'd have a few videos on deck that I need you to play during one of my segments.
Well, our technical capacity is slowly but surely increasing as we go along here, so we'll figure out how to make it work going forward.
Fair enough.
All right, well, that's all fired up for the day, and we're going to head on to the basketball topics that we have for you. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about whether or not we are buying or selling early season trends for players, teams, and coaches. And the first guy we're going to talk about, and I know, Sam, you've got a passionate opinion on this one, is Collin Sexton. Are you buying or selling his early season success?
I'm absolutely doubling down from what we talked about last week when we discussed the Brooklyn Nets trade a little bit. I'm doubling down on not only Collin Sexton, but also the Cleveland Cavaliers. All right. And so I don't know what it is necessarily about Collin Sexton, but I did jot down a few notes of what it might be and why I'm so intrigued by him. Number one, it might be that I just have a soft spot left over from the LeBron days in Cleveland. So it could be along those lines. Just this past week, we saw Sexton go up against the Nets after their big deal. It was the first time the big three got together, Kyrie, Harden, and Durant. And obviously, I think you know my feelings towards Kyrie Irving, not a huge fan. And so that first game with Kyrie back in Cleveland, it was his tribute night. And I watched Colin Sexton wearing Kyrie's former jersey dominate the game in overtime, scoring 20 straight points, hitting a big shot in, I think it was the first overtime, over Kyrie Irving to force that second overtime, in which he hit a number of threes. I think he hit like 3 or 4 threes in that second overtime over each one of the big three members, which was awesome. And then he followed that up with another performance a couple days ago, I believe now, in which they handled Brooklyn again. They didn't have Durant in that game, but Colin put up another nice game, had 9 assists to go along with like 25 plus points. So obviously that got me all fired up. The other one was that reason why I might just love Colin Sexton is because I remember it was 2017, I believe, in which the Crimson Tide played my beloved Minnesota Gophers. And this was kind of my first experience of Colin Sexton watching that game. I remember the final 10 minutes of that game, Alabama played at a 3-5 disadvantage because players got suspended during the game. During that final 10 minutes of the game, the Crimson Tide outscored the Gophers 30-22. Now, Gophers did end up winning the game 89-84, but Sexton had 40 points in the game, and it was one of the greatest efforts I've ever seen in college basketball, given the circumstances of the game. So from that point on, I knew I was going to be a Colin Sexton fan, at least in some capacity. And then I just like dudes who get buckets. Colin Sexton is a guy who just like straight up gets buckets. And so I love watching his game. It's something that I just like guys who get buckets. And I get all the knocks against him. So I imagine you guys will talk about his defense. He's undersized. He's a 1 playing a 2, and he pretty one-dimensional. Doesn't do much else than score. Like, I get all that. All that's true. Like, I'm not like pushing that under the rug. He's absolutely like a one-dimensional player. You can call him ball dominant because he is. And so I get all of that. But I heard you guys last podcast compare him to D'Angelo Russell, and I could not disagree more with you guys. Last year, Colin Sexton had shot 47% from the field, 20 points per game. It was a nice leap over his rookie year. And this year so far, he's averaging over 25 points per game on 53% shooting, over 50% from downtown, and he's at like 79%. JT, hold on, I'm getting there. I got to make my point, and then you guys can tear me down all you want. But so like 79% from the free throw line. I expect some positive aggression because the last couple of years he's been kind of in that mid-80s. And then, and by the way, he does not turn the ball over. Like, if you look at his turnover numbers, 2 per game last year, despite being a ball-dominant guard, he's averaging just over 2 this year. You can say it's because he doesn't pass, so he doesn't really have an opportunity to turn it over. But these are, like, efficiency numbers for a ball-dominant guard that, like, a D'Angelo Russell would dream of. There's no way he could ever be this efficient. In his best year, his all-star year in Brooklyn, he shot 43% from the field and turned the ball over at a crazy rate. That's something that we just don't see from Sexton. So while they kind of have similar style games and they're kind of ball-dominant guards and a little bit one-dimensional, there's just something to say about the efficiency between the two. And then to my last point that I want to get at, just kind of, I understand like all of his shortcomings and like defense and all of that, but Cleveland, the Cavs, the front office, and how they're constructing the team, they know who Colin Sexton is. They know that this guy is a scorer. He gets buckets. So what are they doing? They're surrounding him with defense. They went last year, traded for Andre Drummond. They signed Larry Nance, who's a very good defender at the 4. They traded. They got in on the trade that sent Harden to Brooklyn, and by acquiring Jared Allen, a defensive center who now they have for the future, if they do, and I imagine they will, re-sign him. And then also they spent the 5th overall pick, I believe it was, on Isaac Okoro, who I loved. He was one of my favorite players in the draft, and a guy that I said was a great fit with Cleveland. If I recall, I feel like you guys said that might have been a bad fit, and that's something, again, I could not disagree more with you, because when you look at how you have to build a team around Sexton and even Darius Garland in the backcourt, because both are undersized, both together are not great defensively, you have to put defense around them. You need defensive-minded guys who do not have like a scorer mentality and are okay with just playing 35 minutes and just defending the hell out of the ball. Like, that's what Isaac Okoro is. He's a perfect fit alongside an offensive-minded guy like Colin Sexton. So to me, I love how they're like identifying who Colin Sexton is. Even if they weren't after his rookie year too high on him, they're realizing now that this guy's, he's got like an it factor and he can score, and they're putting the right pieces around him to like be competitive moving forward. So just my final thoughts on this. I know this one was long. I promise I'll keep my other one short, but just to kind of like wrap it up. So like my hope moving forward, because I'm certainly buying both Colin Sexton and Cleveland, the Cavaliers, maybe not so much this year, but moving forward, my hope is, number one, Sexton continues to like develop, because confidence is like one thing, and he's obviously got that, and he's turning into a really good scorer. And I'm hoping that maybe even we saw like a little microcosm of it in that second game against Brooklyn, where he kind of looked to pass more once Brooklyn was keying in on him. He had 9 total assists. I'm hoping that part of his game kind of develops moving forward as he just becomes like a really confident scorer, and he just learns how to move the ball a little bit more. Number 2, I'm hoping that Garland kind of develops into more of like a passer, and because he plays a little bit the same way as Colin Sexton, at least he did last year. He averages less than 4 assists and kind of a ball dominant guard. I'm hoping he kind of be more of the facilitator and allows Sexton to do a little more of the scoring and handling the scoring punch for the team. And then obviously I want them. It's probably inevitable that they're going to have to trade Andre Drummond. So I'm hoping they get some good assets that they can, draft picks that they can hit on, and just kind of fill out the rest of the roster. Get some more 3-and-D guys, add some versatility, and kind of keep building the roster around what they have now. And so I imagine they'll have to keep Love, and there's not much of a market out for him, but his contract should expire at the end of next year, which will clear up cap space for him. So that's kind of my take on the Cavs and Colin Sexton. I'm absolutely buying into him. I love watching this team. They're like my guilty pleasure team as well. So going forward, I'm definitely buying into both the Cavs and Sexton.
So I just want to play fact checker on 2 things right now. So we did, I think, originally, maybe in our season preview, question Okoro's fit with Cleveland, or at least I did, but that was sort of before seeing the positive development of both Garland and Sexton. Once you see that, it makes a lot more sense. 2, you said we compared Colin Sexton to D'Angelo Russell last week, and I don't think that we did. We compared Karis LeVert to D'Angelo Russell. I don't remember making the Sexton to Russell comparison, but
well, you compared the Nets to the Cavs, and you said, well, Allen's the same player, and then Garland's kind of like a Dinwiddie, whereas Sexton would be like a Russell, if I remember correctly.
I think Dylan was, talking about more potential-wise, and I don't... So Sexton has looked good so far, but you also mentioned some positive regression for his free throw rate. But what about some negative regression for his other shooting percentages?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. He's not going to maintain what he's shooting now, but the fact that he shot like 47% last year, and I think he had, I want to say like right around 40%, maybe like 38% from 3 last year.
It was 38.
38? Okay.
Yep.
So so right at like 38. So there's definitely going to be some regression in terms of like his shooting percentages. But I imagine that, the mean, that you'd expect from him is still a lot higher than most like ball dominant guards. So I even though I'm expecting regression, I imagine his efficiency will still be high.
Do you think like Sexton's a guy you would want to build around, or think could be like a number 1 scorer on a good team?
Yeah, good question. Probably not. to be honest with you. I like him, so it's hard for me to say, but like putting my biases aside, he's not like there's a lot of guys that I would take to build a team around before I would Colin Sexton. I'm just kind of speaking in the context of the Cavaliers team as it's constructed now. Colin's there, he's their guy, and so like they're committed to that and they're building around him, and I think that's kind of where I'm coming from more so than if I had a choice, I'd pick Colin Sexton over all these other guys.
Yeah, I hear that. So for me, I definitely buy the improvement. And he's improved every year. He seems like he works on his game where he's adding stuff to his game every single year. I don't know if I buy how much of improvement in his numbers. Like we talked about, or you talked about, like 53% shooting. Like it was actually after last night's game, I think 47% from the 3-point line. Those don't seem like very sustainable numbers to me. Beyond that, I kind of looked into the Cleveland's overall offense and defense for the team.
They're bad offense. I know that.
Yeah. So that was kind of my big takeaway was they're bad on offense and they build the whole offense around Sexton. So is he really like the driving force of the team? It seems to me like it's more like the defense, which is number 2. And you kind of admitted that he wasn't a great defender. So until I can see some better offense numbers from the team, it seems like his efficiency is again kind of a vacuum, almost like Levine. And then the other thing I found was so he averaged like 26 a game right now or so.
Like 27, I think.
27, yeah. So like I heard this point from I think Russillo. He was talking about how many guys are averaging over 25 a game. So I kind of looked into it. Like this year, there's 17 players that are averaging over 25 a game. Like 2 years ago, it was 10. 5 years ago, it was 6. So like 25 a game, it doesn't mean quite as much as it used to. So between like the increased scoring, how they're not very efficient on offense, like to me, like I think he's taking a step forward. But he wouldn't be the guy I'd want to build my offense around, and also maybe the whole team around, which they kind of seem to be doing. So I buy the improvement. I'm selling the Cleveland and Sexton as a great team going forward, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. Just to respond to that, everything's valid. I think we have to, given their offensive numbers, which they're kind of in the bottom of the league, they're top of the league in defense. So they are definitely a defensive centric team, and Colin's kind of their main offensive driver. I think we need to see more of how Garland develops, because that could certainly help out their offensive efficiency numbers. Because he's only played in a handful of games this year. So yeah, it's definitely, you have to build a defensive centric team around Colin Sexton, just because he's an undersized, he's like 6'1" or 6'2", and he's not a point guard. He's better at the 2. He's more of a 2, just terms of natural position. So yeah, I mean, everything you said is valid, but I'm still buying into the Cavs. So we'll see how it shapes out, though. They are overachieving this year.
Oh yeah, well, and they have a negative 1.8 net rating, which is actually better than I thought they would from the start of the year. I thought they'd be one of the worst teams in the league. So that's a positive for the start of the year, but it's still, they have a better record than they should. So I think they'll regress some, but they have improved a lot more than I thought. And Sexton, I didn't think after this first year, I kind of gave up on him, to be honest. So how much he's improved and how he's a good player. There's no doubt about that. So I like him, and I understand where you're coming from for sure.
Yeah, and I'm betting on his continued development in hopes that he can kind of improve some of the other parts of his game and not just necessarily be a scorer.
Well, he's 23 or something. I mean, he's young, so he has a lot of time to improve. But yeah, no, he's been surprisingly good, and the Cavs been surprisingly good.
Yeah. So before we move off of Sexton, I will say, because I think I said last week that I'm not, and I haven't been the biggest Colin Sexton fan, and I think it's probably because I think, I've got somewhat of a reputation with our friends that talk about basketball of getting sort of hot and bothered by physical tool sets. So, Colin Sexton isn't that kind of guy, but he does share sort of a quality with a player that I have loved who is a more physical player, which is Russell Westbrook, in the fact that they're 48 minutes, foot on the gas pedal, and they're just gunning the whole time. And whether or not that translates to winning basketball all the time, I guess is a question, but it's at least, I think, a fun basketball mentality to have. and I do enjoy watching that part of it. So.
Well, they're always going to overachieve too. I mean, kind of like Russell Westbrook's teams, and I don't know if it always works in the playoffs, but they're a fun regular season team, and they've been good. Yeah, they've been good.
Right. All right. So let's move on. So our next topic is actually we're going to move into the coaching ranks, and we're going to talk about Mr. Stan Van Gundy, the head coach for the New Orleans Pelicans. Pelicans have gotten off to a 5-10 start. And now some questions are starting to murmur about whether or not Van Gundy's really got a place there as a head coach, especially I think with some additional questions about Zion's development, whether those are fair or not, but just based on how kind of they're playing with him. Dylan, are you buying or selling Van Gundy in New Orleans?
I am selling, and is there such a thing as a opposite of a guilty pleasure? Is that like a hate watch? Is that what?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, they're on all the time national TV, so I'm seeing them all the time, and I just cannot stand watching the Pelicans. And a lot of it, has to do with roster makeup, but to me, a huge part of it is like Stan Van Gundy. It kind of feels like the Tibbs situation and with the Wolves, where it doesn't seem like he's utilizing his players to their like best abilities. Like they center the whole offense around Brandon Ingram, and Ingram's a really good player, and he's improved a ton. But you have Zion Williamson on the team. If you ever watched Zion this year, and actually any years in the past, I guess, like he's completely unstoppable, and then they marginalize him. They don't use him. Like the only time they use him is in the post. They don't use him as ball handler, pick and roll. They don't use him much as a screener, and he's getting all his buckets on secondary action on the post up, or getting duck-ins or offensive rebounds. So it's crazy that he's averaging 23 a game because he's not getting anything called for him. And beyond that, he's obviously a rim player, and they surrounded him with 3 non-shooters, like complete non-shooters, and then Brandon Ingram. So there's no space on the floor, and that's how they decided to like run their team, which to me just makes zero sense when you have a generational talent like Zion around there. And then beyond that, it seems like Stan also told Zion not to shoot. He's taken, I think, 4 3-pointers this whole year. Like last year, he took 4 in the first game. I mean, obviously Zion's not a great shooter yet, but why would you not want him to develop his shot, and why would you not try to develop him as a player? And then on defense, which is supposed to be his calling card, let me see where they're at. They're 24th in defense, and they play 3 defensive-minded players in their starting lineup, and they still can't scrap together a good defensive team. And part of that is Brandon Ingram and Zion not putting the effort needed into defense, and also being lost. Like Zion's been a total mess on defense, which supposedly was, he was good at Duke. So I'm not sure. A lot of his effort, part of it's scheme, but that's on Zion. But to me, he's just not really optimizing the roster. And if I were him, I would develop the whole scheme, both ends around Zion, and then go from there. And it seems like he's marginalized him. He's almost like mad that Zion's like gets buckets too easy, so he just lets him do his thing. And to me, it's a waste of talent, and that's why the Pelicans are struggling.
Yeah, so I've kind of wondered that because I saw the same stat with like Zion made 4 threes in his debut, and he's made like 2 cents or 0 cents. I don't know what the number was.
He made 1 his first time last game.
Okay. Do you think like Van Gundy's trying to force some sort of like natural progression in his game, like become dominant in the post and then like expand outward afterwards, or what do you think he's trying to do?
Yeah, well, I think that's what he's trying to do. I think he wants Zion to do like the dirty work, where he wants him to, offense rebound, defensive rebound, play as like the big man as a role, post up. But that's just not where the game is these days. And I think that as an avenue for development, and where Zion could become better, and it's important, but there's so many other aspects he needs to develop at the same time. And to like put him as like the dirty works guy when he's that talent, it just doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, that guy can score against anybody. I mean, he's too quick, too fast, too strong. So like put the ball in his hands, and that's what he did at Duke. That's what he did last year. Or Alvin Gentry did with him. So to me, it's just underutilizing him.
Yeah, it is surprising when you think of like the playmaking he showed at Duke, that they don't have him play more of a lead ball handler role. especially because like it makes me think of how Giannis was used his first few years in the league. And I don't know if it was when Jason Kidd entered the picture or not. And not that Kidd was a good coach, but I'm pretty sure it was him that basically gave Giannis the ball and said, like, do your thing as, you know, a supernatural athletic freak. And with, you know, your playmaking tools, make us a better basketball team. It seems like they could do the same thing with Zion.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like you see him get the ball in the wing, and then with the spread floor with a couple shooters, they put JJ Redick out there, Josh Hart. There's nobody that can stay in front of him, you know. And then he's actually a pretty good passer too. When he's actually like the lead ball handler and taking the ball to the basket, he makes an unselfish play, but he's not put in a position to succeed right now. It's like a post up with freaking Steven Adams on the block on the dunker spot. You got Lonzo and then Eric Bledsoe spacing the floor for you. It's like, where's that going? He's running into 5 guys with no outlets for shooting. It just doesn't make a ton of sense.
Sure. Is any of your frustration rooted in the fact that he's on your fantasy team?
No, he's been putting up numbers because, I mean, he's still like 23-10, which is fine, but he should be like a 30 and like 14 guy, and with some more assists. He's not getting any steals and blocks, so that's on him on the defense end. He's not trying, which is confounding. That was one of his strengths at Duke, was being able to guard all 5 positions and being in the passing lanes. He's not doing that, which is, I'm not sure if that's scheme or him or I don't know. It's confusing.
All right. Well, it sounds like we're selling on Van Gundy, and I don't think I can disagree there either. But let's move on to now the one team we have on our agenda, and that is the Utah Jazz. So the Jazz have started out 12-4 now. They're on an 8-game win streak that have sort of catapulted them to the top, or at least the 2nd seed in the West. And sort of behind that are a couple of resurgent performances. One from Jordan Clarkson's been sort of an efficient scorer off the bench, and Mike Conley is averaging above career highs in both field goal percentage and three-point percentage. Are you guys buying or selling the Jazz's start to the season?
So I'm absolutely buying into the Jazz. I actually really like this team for a long time. Not someone like I'm going to talk about a lot. Not a team that I'm going to talk about a lot. But I've always been intrigued by this franchise. And then this team specifically, I really like this year, and I'm certainly buying into them. I love Quinn Snyder and his like defensive mentality. Like every year, this team always has one of the top, 10 defensive teams at least. I think this year they're probably, I didn't look into it, maybe Dylan did, but I bet they're top 5, top 6, somewhere in that area. Maybe for sure, I'd say top 10. But he's always got strong defenses, and they got obviously a great rim protector in Rudy Gobert. He's a defensive player of the year candidate every single season. It seems like. And then Mike Conley, even at his, I guess, getting like advanced age, if you will, he's still defending at a really high level, which I was surprised to see. Because I think last year it almost seemed like he was trending like way down, and then he's kind of had a little bit of a resurgence this year, which is big for them. And then they just have a bunch of like really good 3-and-D role players like Ingles, Bogdanovich, Royce O'Neal is fine. Like these guys just like fit because they have no egos and they can knock down threes and they can defend. So just having these guys alongside some of those other defensive players within Quinn Snyder's system, I think is like a huge advantage for them. And then they have the scorer in Donovan Mitchell. I'm still looking kind of what Shaq was saying. Like I still kind of want to see Donovan. Like I think there was some truth to like basically what Shaq was saying. I kind of want to see him still take that next level because right now, if you ask me, I'd put Lakers 1, Clippers 2, and I put the Jazz at number 3 in the West. I really believe that as of what I'm seeing right now, that they're the 3rd best team in the West. But in order to compete with the Lakers and the Clippers, who I think are 2 of 3 contenders in the league, they need like a Donovan Mitchell to take that next step into like stardom. He needs to be able to compete consistently with Kawhi Leonard, with LeBron James in those big moments in order for this team to be like a legitimate contender. But either way, I'm buying into like the team. I'm buying into the their record right now. I'm buying into like the 3rd team in the West. And then like when we think about like the best franchises over like the last, say, I don't know, 3 decades, we always think of like the Lakers. We think of the Celtics. More recently, like the Spurs, Bulls under Jordan. Like we think of like those teams as being the best franchise, and rightfully so. Like the Lakers and Celtics are obviously the two best, but no one ever brings up the Jazz in that conversation. But this is one of the best run teams in professional sports, not just the NBA. They have the fifth or sixth, I think it's fifth best winning percentage over. I think the lifetime of the franchise, like all franchises in the league that are still currently here, and have not like left the city or anything along those lines. But this is like a team that has a bunch of playoff appearances. They make the playoffs seemingly every year. They always have a good, solid roster. Nothing's changed this year. I'm buying into them. I thought we were going to talk about Jeremy Grant. I was going to kind of tie these things together. But with the departure of Jeremy Grant, which I think was a huge loss for the Nuggets, and I even said that before the season. In fact, he's one of the guys I really wanted the Lakers to target if they were able to come up with the funds financially. Obviously, Detroit gave Jeremy Grant a big contract. He would be stupid not to take that and take the money, even if it's for a bad franchise. But he would have been a perfect fit in the Lakers. But anyways, I digress. But with the departure of him from the Nuggets, I really think that this catapult the Jazz in front of the Nuggets, because if you remember, it was the first round last year in which the Nuggets knocked them out in 7. So I like them more this year. I like the resurgence of Mike Conley. Just looking at defensive win shares, Mike Conley was 15th, which I was just surprised by because I thought he was kind of sort of losing that part of his game. He's a guy who maybe just kind of dragged his tail through the regular season and then was more of a playoff guy, like we saw from like Rondo last year. Gobert 16th. He's in win shares. He's a big time rim protector. He's key for them. And then so I'm really liking everything about this team. Not willing to put them in the contenders category or anything like that. They're still a notch below that, but I do like this team a lot, and I think they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs.
Yeah, the only question I have for the Jazz is like the top end talent, because I don't think Gobert and Mitchell are their best players, and neither of those guys I don't think are top 20 guys. But their team in general is so complete. They have a great starting lineup. They fill out their bench. They moved Ingles to the bench. They got Clarkson coming. They got Favors in free agency, and they've been very good. The huge surprise part to me was I didn't know this, but they were first in the league in makes this year and for 3-pointers. They're third in attempts, second in percentage, so they're a great 3-point shooting team. So that gives them a higher upside, especially in the playoffs, where you can knock off any team if you get hot in the right series. And they also have the defense to do it. So like Sam, you said that they were a top 10. Yeah, they're 6th in defense and 5th in offense. And if you look at all like the title contending teams from the past, they usually have 2 top 5-ish offense and defenses, and they have both. So I'm buying them too. Again, I think they might run into trouble with the Clippers and Lakers because they don't have the wing defense that. Yep. But Gobert on the back end and being able to make 3-pointers and make them at a high efficiency is huge, and so that gives them a chance against anybody. So I agree with you, Sam. I'm buying them.
Yeah, and real quick, because I forgot to mention, Jordan Clarkson, I think it deserves at least some recognition because he's a guy I've never liked. He's been just I remember his days in Cleveland and those LeBron's team. Could not stand Clarkson. Every time he came on the court, I was like, oh, God, here we go again. He's going to just dominate the ball, throw up some just ridiculous shots, and he's just going to hurt the offense in general. But this is the perfect fit for him as a 6th man coming off the bench because it's a defensive-minded team. They have all these like 3-and-D guys. He can just come in and just worry about scoring and getting his buckets. And that's exactly what they need, that scoring punch off the bench that they've kind of maybe lacked over the last couple of seasons. So this is like the perfect fit for Jordan Clarkson, and he's taken advantage of it. So definitely wanted to bring him up in that.
Well, and the fun part about it, too, is like before he used to do it like – he'd come in off the bench as like kind of a Jamal Crawford, where he would just take over the offense and just put up shots. Like he's doing it within their system this year, and Quinn Snyder's done a great job of putting him in positions to succeed, and he's been shooting the hell out of the ball. And I remember when they gave out that contract, I'm pretty sure in our group text, I'm like, what the hell? Why the hell would you give $64 million to Clarkson? And I've been wrong so far. He's been good for their team.
Yeah, so I think I would probably buy the regular season success so far. And they're the kind of team that I like, where they, like you mentioned, they're a well-balanced team. They've got sort of understated stars, but you also sort of alluded to, with sort of LeBron and Clippers takes that, stars win in the postseason, like real superstars. And like you said, Sam, I think Shaq, as misguided as that conversation might have been, I think the take was right. Mitchell's been the same player for 4 years, and I kind of worry that team's going to get stuck in sort of the same mold as Conley's teams, grit and grind teams in Memphis. You mentioned they got more shooting, but I kind of think they're going to be a regular season overachiever, and they're going to be an early bout in playoffs potentially. But
hey, I will say I thought the same thing about Mitchell, but the last 10 games, so 2/3 of the season, small sample size, but he has improved where his 3-point shooting percentage is going up. He's taking better shots, and he's becoming more of a playmaker. There's been a couple passes where it's like, yo, how do you see that guy? I mean, it was like LeBron level passes when he's driving the lane and for wide open 3-pointers. So I think he is developing. We'll talk about it later with Shaq, but I think he is developing. Maybe just not on the same linear path that other superstars have.
Well, and it's kind of a weird arc for him too, because he came in so surprisingly NBA ready. He was a middle first round pick, and he just came out of the gate averaging 20 points a game and looking pretty good doing it. So that's, if he would have started from more of a ground zero, it might be more of a kind of apparent how much he's improved over time. But
yeah, he came out 20 points a game, and he took over Hayward's role, and as the best player of the team first year, which was surprising. I mean, he was 21 when he came in the league, but still, I mean, he was good to start.
All right, well, that's going to wrap us up for our buy or sell portion, and now we're going to move on to another section we've decided to bring back, and that is our open questions to the rest of the NBA, where we just kind of each of us pose one question to their two hosts, and we talk about whether or not this is something that can get answered. So, Sam, let's start with you. What's your open question to us and to the NBA?
I thought you were going to save the best for last, JT. But so the question I'm going to ask you guys is, who deserves more of the blame during the Tibbs era in Minnesota for their poor defensive performance and ultimately their poor overall performance? Tom Thibodeau or Karl-Anthony Towns?
Do you want me to go first, JT?
Yeah, take it.
Okay. Defense, I would say mostly Cat. I do think that Tibbs, in a lot of ways, had some bad rotations, and I think he had some schemes that didn't make sense for our team. He dropped the pick and roll a lot, which makes sense in certain situations, but it also put a lot of onus on Cat to be that rim protector, and beyond that, put him in a position to be to get fouls, and that's one thing I wrote down was, obviously Cat's not a great defender, sometimes doesn't put in effort, too many fouls, and he chases blocks, and so that's acknowledging that right away. Cat needs to improve. I think he has this year. He's only played a couple of games, so hard to say. But beyond that, for the whole team, Tibbs, man, I could go on this for half an hour about Tibbs. I went to 24 games that year. It was the most frustrating coaching job I've ever witnessed in my entire life. I'm not joking. They won at the home games. They won probably 20 of the 24 I went to, and I came out of the games with a bad taste in my mouth every single game. I was just bitching to my dad about the games. And mostly, here's the best stat that I can remember from that season. Towns was 5th in usage rate on the whole team. He was behind Jamal Crawford, Teague, Butler, and then Wiggins. And I think once D Rose came on the team, he only played 10 games in the regular season. He had a higher usage rate. So he was 6th on the team in the usage rate. Beyond that, I just didn't think he utilized the team. I mean, if you look at that team compared to Butler's team now with Miami, right? What's the big difference? I think they're similar talent-wise, right? But Eric Spoelstra created a system. You don't think so, Sam? But I'll keep going. I think it's similar talent level, and I think the schemes Spoelstra fitted to hit the team that they had, while Tibbs tried to conform our team to his system, which that's not what the best coaches do. The best coaches fit the system or the players, and put them into the best position to succeed. And I felt like that's not what he did. And then beyond those that stat about the usage rate, when we played Houston in the playoffs, you guys remember that?
Yes.
Our offensive scheme against Houston, they were the first team to start switching every pick, right? The way we attacked that was by giving Teague an ISO against Capella. That was how we did it. I was at all those home games, and I was losing my mind the whole time. We had PJ Tucker on Cat, and then we had Teague on Capella, and then we did ISO every time. It was super frustrating. So I go on for days, but I'm going to stop right now. So you guys keep going with it.
So you had said that defensively you thought most of the blame should be on Cat, but you also said, you mentioned how underutilized he was in the offense. Do you think Tibbs deserves any of that blame for Cat's lack of defensive success because of how disenchanted he might have been with his role in the rest of the game?
Oh, I mean, that makes a ton of sense. I mean, coaches do that all the time. It's a Doc Rivers special. They give Kendrick Perkins the ball to start the game on the post to get him going and engage on defense. And so that's for sure the case. And they, it's kind of like with Zion with Sam Gutty. He wanted Cat to do all the dirty work. Why would you do that when you have like one of the best offensive bigs in NBA history? We're talking about like him, like, oh, let's do rebounds. Oh, you're setting picks. Oh, you're playing defense. I want to give him the ball.
Sam, rebuttal.
Is the floor mine?
The floor is yours. Yes.
Yeah, I go all day, but yeah, you could go.
All right. Before, in the words of Skip Bayless, I unleash. I want to address a couple points that you made, Dylan.
Yeah.
Number one, the usage rate. So I get it, and a lot of it had to do with how the offensive scheme that Tibbs put together. But at some point, if you're Karl-Anthony Towns, you have to, and you're the best on the team. You're better than Jimmy Butler. You're better than Jeff Teague and Andrew Wiggins. You have to be like, give me the damn ball. Like, you have to like straight up tell the coach to be, give me the freaking ball, and just, I mean, you have to have that attitude. So I think,
well,
when
first
you talk
of all,
about
okay,
usage rate,
before
part of
you
that
go,
is on Towns too.
Before you go on that note, though, like, that's not necessarily Cat's personality, and I'm not sure you can blame him for that. And also, I don't think Tibbs would have responded well to that conversation.
And then he's also big too, so you have to like,
you have to feed him the ball. Yeah.
So there's a couple things there. One, Cat's way more important to the organization than any coach will ever be. So if you have to take it not to Tibbs but to someone else about being disgruntled and not getting the ball, the front office will hear that, and they'll. I guess Tibbs was the front office at that point. So I guess, there's only so much you can do there because Tibbs would probably just turn around and trade it Towns. So, all right. Anyways, the second point that I wanted to quickly touch on before I went in was you mentioned how the Heat, their roster last season, not much different talent-wise than the year the T-Wolves, I think, got into the 8 seed where we won like 45 games or so. 47 games. There is one big difference, and that's the man in the middle. Like, Bam Adebayo is one of the best defensive players in the league. Like, he set the tone defensively for that team, and that's why, I mean, that's simply why they were a lot better defensively than the T-Wolves were. We did not have that guy in the middle to protect the rim, and if you can't defend the paint, I mean, that's huge. You can have all the best perimeter defenders in the world, and if you can't protect the paint and you have no one stopping the other team from getting to the rim, that's the biggest factor in determining defensive success, I believe. So just going into like now what I want to unleash on kind of leads right into it. So when I think of like the best defensive teams, say over the last couple of seasons, no particular order, just teams that have been really good defensively and also like really good overall, as in like they're making the playoffs, they're competitive. So number one, just again, no particular order, I'm looking at Milwaukee. Giannis, incredible defender, one of the best in the game. He can block shots, he can protect the rim, he can guard any position, really. So that's number one. Number two, Utah, Rudy Gobert, every year, Defensive Player of the Year candidate, protects the rim. He's like kind of the focal point for that defense as well. Quinn Snyder's scheme, which we just talked about. Obviously, LA with AD and what they were able to do last year, the defensive team they are now compared to just where they were before they got AD, just the difference that a rim protector like that makes. The Pacers, Miles Turner, Miami, obviously I just talked about Bam, Philly with Embiid, struggling a little bit defensively this year, but usually they're like the last couple of years they've been right around that top 10 mark. So you look at all those, they have one thing in common. They all have like a dominant interior presence rim protector. Not necessarily a great offensive like big, but someone who can protect the paint, someone who's not going to get pushed around, someone who I'm not going to go to one of their games and see against like Dwight Howard and see on the Jumbotron him mouthing the words effing. I'm not going to say the word because I don't know how PG this podcast is. But when we went to the Charlotte Hornet game not too long, a couple of years ago, Dwight Howard with the Hornets, I might add, which was not the best version of Dwight Howard, was pushing Karl-Anthony Towns around that game and basically had no respect for him. And then the Jumbotron caught him mouthing some not so nice words, to which a huge reaction from the crowd ensued. So to me, like these guys all have a presence. They all have like no one's pushing them around. And that's what makes a great defensive team. So when I think about like Tibbs and who deserves more blame, Tibbs, Cat, for the struggles in Minnesota, So when I think about Tibbs, like the reason I asked the question was because of like the defensive success that, albeit a small sample size, the Knicks have had this year, being one of the top defensive teams in the league with, again, a good rim protector and a good defensive presence in Mitchell Robinson. He's not to the level of the guys I just mentioned previously, but he's still a good interior presence. And then you have Julius Randle as well, who's always been kind of that. He's not a rim protector, but he's like a bruiser. He's like, that's always been his game. Like he's like big and he's like physical and he's going to like body you up and he's not a guy you can just move around on the block. Like they have this strong interior presence where they know they're not going to get pushed around. And what's happened so far this year, they're the best defensive team in the league. They give up the least amount of points per game, or top 3 if you're looking at like efficiency numbers. And they're just overachieving big time. And then, and so that's like just small sample size, I know. But then I'm going back and I'm looking at his days in Chicago when, again, they had one of the best defense in the league. Obviously, in the middle, who did they have? Joakim Noah, incredible defensive player again. And he had, obviously, with that team, with Noah in the middle, one of the best defensive teams in the league, and a team that made the conference finals, that was consistently in the semifinals of the conference. They were like a really good team that probably overachieved given like the talent that they had. It was because Tibbs' calling card in developing like a good team, like in order to have like a successful year, he needs to establish and develop like a good defensive scheme and defensive team. In Minnesota, and this is where I'm going to put more of the blame on Karl-Anthony Towns, and I'm going to say 75% of the blame goes to Karl-Anthony Towns, where 25 goes to Tibbs, because I understand like the rotation issues. He's obviously not a good players coach. Like players, I don't think like really, want to go. They're not lining up at that door to play with him or anything along those lines. But he never had that defensive presence in Minnesota. We couldn't protect the paint. Sure, we have Jimmy Butler, a great perimeter defender. Again, it doesn't matter if you can't guard the paint. And then I'm not even going to go down and pick apart the defensive numbers for Towns. We all know that. It's well documented. We've talked about it before. But that fact alone, that he was not able to establish like a post presence on the defensive end, and that's his calling card. That's how he wins games. That's how he develops teams. And the fact that he didn't have that is, I think, the biggest and sole reason why he just was never able to establish like a winning team here other than like that 1 year in Minnesota. And then even if you look at the year he got fired, 19 and 21, which really the roster was just, it was like better obviously than it is now, but it was like in absolute turmoil. I think that was the year with like the Butler saga, or Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and he still managed like almost 500. So I'm starting to think that he overachieved a little bit, to be quite honest with you, with like the turmoil that he was going through, and then seeing how we've been since he left, and just absolutely abysmal. I'm putting for sure more of the blame on Cat, because if you look at the defensive numbers, 2016 we were 27th, 2017 27th, and then that half a year, if you will, with in 2018 he was 23rd. Everywhere else he's gone, he's had a top 10, top 5 defensive team, and then we're seeing that again this year with the Knicks. So to me, the fact that he never had that interior presence, there's no reason Towns can't be. Because of like his size, his athleticism, wingspan, all of that, he should be a much better player than he is. But to JT's point not too long ago, I think a lot of it comes down to just attitude and his demeanor and his and just how he plays the game. I don't think it's conducive to winning ball games, and that's kind of been my stance on him the whole time. And Dylan even mentioned earlier in this pod, I don't know. If you looked at like the top scorers in the league that can average 25 a game or get you 25 on any night, there's so many of them like scoring, and he's a great offense player. Don't get me wrong. You can clearly see we're a much worse team this year without him than with him. He's a tremendous offensive player, but there's so many guys now that are coming into the league who are like stretch 4, stretch 5s who can shoot threes. We talked about Jeremy Grant. I mean, there's all these players who can get buckets and do all these things offensively. I think what separates like the really good bigs is their ability to play defense, and just kind of circling back around to the Tibbs point. I'll just stop there, because like I said, I could go on about this forever as well. I'm definitely going to give more of the blame, the lion's share of the blame to Cat over Tibbs here. So
here's what I'd say, I guess, before we move on. So I think you've got a point that Tibbs, with the right personnel, has proven to be an elite defensive coach. And so in that sense, if you're going to talk about the lack of defensive success in Minnesota, sure, you can put the majority of the blame on Towns if you want to. However, I think we've talked before too about what a sort of transformational offensive talent Towns is, in that underutilization of him in the offensive game. I think you have to, that just speaks to the rigidity of Tibbs as a coach in general. So you might be able to put the bulk of the lack of defensive success on Towns, but the lack of team success, I think, still has to go on Tibbs as a coach.
Well, I think they're tied more closely together in a Towns coach team than you'd think. I think, like I said, that's his calling card. In order for him to have team success, he needs to establish a defense, because that's how he plays. And you're absolutely right. He is rigid. Like, he plays his starters like 38 minutes a game. Like, he just drives them into the ground. That's all true, and that's definitely a knock on Tibbs, and it's, a well-deserved knock. But to me, if you're hiring Tibbs to bring in a strong defensive team, and ultimately you hope to develop an offense around that defense. But I think if you're not able to establish that defense first, then, I mean, what we saw was kind of just like the recipe for disaster. So, I mean, I watched Jimmy Butler go into the finals with the Heat with Bam Adebayo. Just couldn't rave enough about the guy. Jimmy couldn't about Bam. Like that playoff run. We saw that block against Miami against Milwaukee in the, not the Eastern Conference Finals, but the semifinals, to end that one game. I mean, it's just night and day. Like, right now, I think that Bam is a far more valuable player than Towns because of what he brings defensively. And so that's kind of how I look at the situation. And I know I get your guys' points or knocks on Tibbs are absolutely right. I mean, I can't like dispute them, but to me, I think I'm trying to bring some awareness to the fact that Towns' play is just not conducive to winning. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, no, I think like Tibbs, like he really has to blame the GM and president for not giving the right players.
Yeah, I mean, he should definitely not have that role.
Yeah, but no, I just think about more like how like the Denver built around Jokic, or how Brad Stevens has built around no like centers and has a good defense. I mean, you got to have the ability to change up your style to your team. And I would love to see them switch more even, because they had a bunch of like big guys that have relatively fast feet, but instead of trying to switch all the time on defense and trying to at least like make smart switches, we just did the same defense over and over again, same offense. And to me, like it's the rigid nature of Tibbs. And I think you are like right where they definitely didn't gel, like Cat, Tibbs, Butler. So maybe he just wasn't right for the team, but he definitely was not right for the team. Where I mean, you can place some on Cat. I just play more on Tibbs. Just that's me personally. So
yeah, and so like just the Jokic versus the what coach did you mention? Stevens. I mean, those are kind of like outliers to me because you're not going to get too many coaches as good as Brad Stevens. Like he's, I think, in the upper echelon of coaches. You think like Pop, you think Carlisle, you think, you can put Nick Nurse in there, you can put a couple other guys. So yeah, he's absolutely like scheme wise one of the best, and Boston with no center is still a really, really good defensive team. And then I look at the other side of things with Jokic, who's not a great defensive center, but they still built a good team around him that is winning a bunch of games. To me, like the play style of Jokic is very unique, and while he doesn't have like that dominant defensive presence, he's an absolute elite playmaker. Like there's a difference between being a good passer, passing out of double teams, passing to wide open guys, all that good stuff, like when basically passing out of double teams. There's a big difference between that and being an actual playmaker, and I think Towns, while he's a great passer, Jokic is like he can like run the offense. Like he's a great playmaker. He makes like ridiculous passes like you'd see like LeBron James make. And so I think he's more of like an outlier than kind of like the typical way you need to win with like a center. So yeah, those are good points. But to me, I still think until I see it, I'm it's hard for me to give Towns much credit.
Yeah, I'm just happy I don't have to go on any Tibbs games anymore with Timberwolves. I swear to God, I was gonna have a heart attack. My blood pressure was so high every time I came out of the stadium. So for my personal health, I'm happy for it.
I think Knicks fans are pleasantly surprised right now.
Oh, it's honeymoon stage, man. We'll see if they can keep that up. Yeah.
Yeah, I still maintain that it is part of the Wolves' 15-year-long curse at this point, that the only winning season we've had in that time span might have been the least aesthetically pleasing to watch.
Yeah, man. It was horrible.
Terrible.
And then not only aesthetically, but then like it wasn't fun to like all the shit that was going on. Drama.
Yeah, no. Just an absolute nightmare. Yeah. Never ending here in Minnesota. But all right, well we kind of dove into that one pretty good, so much so that I don't really want to talk about my question anymore, but I do want to get to Dylan's. So Dylan, what's your question to us?
So I'm sure you guys saw the NBA on TNT this year. Do you guys find that entertaining, and do you think it's good for the NBA?
So I'll start on that one. So in general, I do find it entertaining. I do not think it's good for the NBA. So I had enjoyed it, and I actually just saw a tweet recently too where somebody sort of claimed that NBA on TNT has sort of like jumped the shark this year, where they've gone from just like fun-loving commentators to like three old guys trying to, I'll say two old guys basically just trying to make a scene every time they're on camera. Yeah. And like so Shaq, and I guess I can't really name anything from Barkley recently, but Shaq in particular. So it started with I think it was Instagram comments on Gobert getting $200 million, where he basically like tore him down and said he was garbage and that he would have fouled out in 3 quarters against him and he wasn't worth the money and whatever. And then he like tried to joke it off. And then it was the Christian Wood not knowing who he was a couple of weeks later. And now, just recently by telling Donovan Mitchell to his face that he didn't think he'd get any better.
After he won the game.
After he won the game.
Well, he said it before the game, and then I think he still
said it after the game. He scored 36 and was awesome, and he's like, "Hey, I don't think you're good enough."
Yeah. So it's not like Shaq's place to motivate the guy. Like, first of all, the guy isn't a grown adult man. You're not his dad. Like, I don't know why you're taking it on yourself to say that, you know, he's not good enough. Like, he doesn't need to hear that from you. And secondly, so just in general, I don't think it's good if you think about who or what is the best known commentary on the NBA. To me, I think that is the NBA on TNT crew. I think it's those guys. I think it's that show. So when you have those guys constantly seemingly tearing down and sort of like trying to do what they can to discredit today's game is a really weird sort of position to be in. That those are the voices of the game, and they're seemingly doing what they can to like bring them to their knees. Like, I don't quite understand it, and I don't think the NBA would be happy with it either, unless, you know, they're just happy with the clicks it's driving, I guess. And I can't imagine that those guys are going to be too excited in the future, like to jump into those end of game interviews. I wish Mitchell handled it with class, but I wish he just would have like took the headset off and said, "See, like, I don't need you, like, bye."
Yeah.
But that's about my stance on it, I guess.
All right, before I go in, I just want to shout out to our viewer Tanner Borgen. I see him in the chat. Really appreciate you tuning into the show. So like, I think it's to the. What I think should happen is when, like, before the guys go on TV on air, they should put like one of those like viewer discretion, be advised type, like, you know, before they go on, because I think it really depends on what what you're listening to them for. If you're listening to them for analysis and like an actual knowledge of the game, then I think you're completely misguided, and that's on the viewer. But like, if you're going to them just to like laugh and have entertaining conversations and thoughts, kind of like what we do sometimes on here, then like, I absolutely love these guys. They're super entertaining, and TNT is paying them to be entertaining. When I know, like, it might ruffle people the wrong way, ruffle feathers, when Shaq comes on and talks about Donovan Mitchell and then says it again right to his face in a post-game press conference or interview on the court. Like, that might rub people the wrong way, but what are we doing right now? We're talking about it. Like, that's why Dylan had the conversation. That's what's driving viewers to TNT. That's why they're paying these guys what they pay them. It's for the entertainment purposes. They're not going to bring on like guys who are just going to talk about the analytics and dive into the numbers, and that would be boring. No one would be tuning into them. No one would look forward to their halftime talks. You know, like when they get up and Shaq and Kenny run to the board in the back, like, that's all part of like what their like whole thing is. It's all about entertainment. And so if you're looking at it in any other way, like, that's not entertainment, if you like actually really like care what these guys are saying, then yeah, you're gonna, you know, it's gonna rub you the wrong way. But to me, like, I listen to them for entertainment. I get my like opinions from the guys who actually like dive into the numbers, who know what they're talking about, who maybe even watch the games on like a Tuesday night, Charlotte, Orlando, whatever. I don't care what Chuck or Kenny or and Kenny's actually the best of the bunch. But I don't care what Shaq or Chuck have to say about anything. Like, really, I just want to listen to them for entertainment, and that's exactly what they do, and they deliver every time. So yeah, I'm all for these guys. I love them.
I mean, but like, let's compare it to like the NFL, like the pregame shows for the NFL, when you have like Randy Moss, Rex Ryan, all those guys, even like Troy Aikman, Tony Romo. Could you ever imagine them saying that to a player ever? And like,
they do that all the time.
No, they don't.
Rex Ryan and Baker Mayfield, like,
to Baker their face.
Okay, maybe not to their face, but it, like, the thing is, like, Shaq actually likes Donovan Mitchell. He just basically said that he can't take like the next step, and he was just looking for him to address it. I thought it was actually like an interesting question, and you know, obviously it it's gonna tug on your strings like the wrong way.
It wasn't a question though. He just said it.
Yeah,
to him.
well, no, he asked like how like.
No, he said I don't think you're good enough to take that step. What do you think? Like, what do you say?
Yeah, what
What's
do you
he supposed
say?
to
And
say?
that he was looking for like a response, basically what Donovan ultimately ended up giving him after he said all right. He's like, I've heard that my whole life. I'm just gonna keep getting better. That's kind of like the response he was looking for in that. Like, and Shaq actually likes Donovan Mitchell, like likes his game. It's just basically what I talked about earlier. And with the problem with the Jazz, like I need to see Mitchell take that next step to compete with the LeBrons and the Kawhis of the world. That's exactly where Shaq was coming from. So I don't think it was misguided as you may want to make it sound. But if you look at the Fox crew, Dylan, like before the football games, Colin Cowherd, he's gone on interviews all the time with players that he criticizes. Baker Mayfield's come on the show, and they've gone back and forth. Like this happens all the time, but the reason they're paying Colin Cowherd so much money is because people listen to that stuff. People tune into it. It's for entertainment, and that's exactly what Kenny and the crew are delivering.
Well, I was gonna say like, well, imagine that, but then also like those guys never like talk about like, I mean, they'll talk about certain aspects of the game, like let's say like quarterbacks being hit and how it's like a softer like league, But like all they do like the whole time when they're on there is say how they shoot too many threes, how nobody plays defense. They don't even know the players that are on the court. He didn't know who Christian Wood was.
That's not their job. Yeah, but I mean, that's not what they're getting paid to do.
But
I think so.
What are they getting paid to do then? Like
just to entertain.
Literally. Yeah, and how does it work out for the league then? Do you think that's actually going to be a good thing for the league? You think those bad clicks? Do you think anybody above 50 is going to be watching the NBA? Like after
all publicity is good publicity. That's exactly how it drives viewers. Like people tune in to that. As much as like I get where you're coming from. Like you're absolutely right. They're like their takes are like eye rolling, and the fact that they don't know who Christian Wood is, like, come on, really? But at the end of the day, like TNT's doing really well. I guarantee you that. And it's a lot of it has to do with like those guys because people tune in, and that's the bottom line.
I have to look at the numbers, but I mean, it's getting to the point where it's past that, but where it's like insulting. Like Shaq the other day said, Jokic was from Jokic from Russia. How is this different? He says like he doesn't even know he's from Serbia. Like, are you kidding me? Like, and that's probably insulting to Jokic. Then the Mitchell thing, the Christian Wood, like it's just getting like over the top, and it's like to me, there's a difference between entertainment and then like hating, and it's veering more towards a hating where it's not fun to watch. And in like Durant's not gonna do an interview anymore. You see his comment on the situation. LeBron's gonna be the same way pretty quick. He commented on it. It's getting to a point where it's gonna become an adversarial, and that's not good for the league.
Yeah, that's what. I totally agree. They're there to entertain, and they're good at doing that. Like, no question. But like you said, Dylan, these players, they're being used as like comedy fodder at this point. And these guys are the faces of your game, and they're not going to like that, and they don't want to be used as that long term. So it might drive a couple of clicks in the short term, but I mean, you see guys like there are former players like Allen Iverson. Like Iverson like stands like a lot of these like current players, loves them. Like he'll offer glowing praise about so many guys, and you can still do that and be entertaining. You don't have to like just offer some hot take or even fake a lack of awareness of these guys in their backgrounds, their games, or even their presence in the league, just to get those clicks and just to like drive that attention short term, because I don't think it's sustainable and I don't think it lasts.
Yeah,
well, I think you go, Sam.
I was gonna say there definitely is a fine line, and they probably are crossing that a bit, so they might have to reel it in for sure. But I think the whole like premise of like the show and the entertainment aspect is how they walk that fine line. So I agree with you. They probably, like a lot of the stuff that more recently that they've been saying has definitely crossed that line. But if they can like reel it in, I mean, I think they'll be fine.
Well, I'm just frustrated in general by like the older players. There's only a few that actually like are fans of the game and like the players. Like most of them are just bitching, man. And it's like it turns off a lot of the older people. Like they don't watch the game, or casual fans like Pat Kelly. He says like how they don't play defense because he listens to headlines like that.
Yeah. And that's why I roll my eyes when I hear, oh, like he played the game, he knows it so well.
Yeah.
It's like, are you kidding me? Like I don't care if the guy spent 20 years in the league. Like Paul Pierce is a great example of that. Paul Pierce is just everything that comes out of his mouth, it's just like, come on, dude. And like, he's actually an analyst. Like he's not trying to entertain for the most part. He's actually on there with like Jalen Rose, who I really like. And
I love Jalen.
Yeah, I love Jalen, and he's part of that crew. So he's actually like an analyst. So he's trying to give like, good takes. But you just listen to him talk, you're like, dude, like I've never played the game of basketball beyond like the middle school level, and I can tell you that like my takes are just as good as Paul Pierce's. So I always roll my eyes when I hear that.
All it's horrible is
I feel like some of these takes that they've got at this point, or their stances on today's game, I feel like so much of it sometimes is rooted in jealousy because like the financial boon of the NBA didn't happen until like pretty recently. So I think it is honestly like, like Shaq on set, film another commercial to make a few bucks, reading that Rudy Gobert signed a $200 million contract, and he's just like fuming about it. Like I honestly think that's what part of it is that they're looking at these guys, they think they're better players, it's their ego, and they're wondering why they didn't make $200 million.
Well, it's the attention too. They want to be back in the limelight. They want to, it's so frustrating though. I think it's starting to actually like hurt the league, and people are actually, taking them seriously. I mean, at least the casuals, like Christian Wood would say.
Yeah. So before we move on, Sam, how do you feel about Bill Simmons? Tana wants to know.
Oh, I appreciate all viewer comments. So I try to answer each one that we get. So what are my thoughts on Bill Simmons as an NBA analyst? Very thoughtful question there. Tanner Borgen looks like the name is. I mean, so how I view it is I don't look at Bill Simmons as an analyst. Again, I look at it as an entertainer. I listen to Bill Simmons to get like entertaining thoughts. Now, there are parts where he kind of like dives in and kind of serves a little more of the analyst role. And I respect him. Like, so I'll listen to his thoughts, and at least he's rational is what I would say when we talk about like Kenny, Chuck, all these guys. They're just irrational, throwing things out that just try to get something to stick. Bill Simmons is a little more thoughtful, a little more rational. I can understand, like, I listen to like when he tries to be an analyst and kind of talk about the game. But for me, it's just more about the entertainment aspect. I that's what I listen to him for.
I think he's a good NBA analyst, but like if you're talking NFL, he's not. Like he's more of a casual. And like if you talk about pop culture, he's like more casual. I think NBA, like that's like his thing. I think he's like I respect his opinion.
Yeah. So, and another thing too, like I also try to steer away from him as an analyst because like and this is true with everyone. So I'm not just saying this about Bill Simmons, but he has biases too, and they clearly come out in his analysis. Yeah.
Celtics.
Well, the Celtics are obviously, yeah. But even so, there's like other players and teams that you just know that he's biased towards. So when he comes out with his analysis, he, even if it's like subconsciously, you still know that he's, So I mean that's true with everyone, but that's why I kind of look at it more of like an entertainer. His podcasts are, especially when he brings on guests. I love the interviews.
He's good.
I think he sucks.
Do you actually?
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh. I mean, some people do.
I don't.
There's a lot of people who like think he's kind of like an arrogant prick. I know too.
He's an awesome writer. I love reading him. It's too bad he doesn't write anymore.
Yeah, The Ringer in general, I think is, good writing for sure. I don't go to him for much. I don't really take their word as gospel, but it is sort of entertaining. I agree. All right. Well, that wraps up our basketball content for today. Which, yep, we're still running a little bit long in the teeth, I think. But it's just, again, trust the process. This is year 2 in Philly, and we'll turn it around eventually. So.
I only have an hour to get in my bets before the NFL game starts. So
we don't want to run over on that again. All right. So before we move on, I guess we just want to give everybody a taste of what we got coming up, what we're planning on doing until next time. So what are you guys doing? What shows you watching? What music you listening to? I think the same Tanner Borgen took issue with this being declared a Young Thug podcast. He
good.
Submitted a motion to have that wiped from the record, and that motion was denied. So Dylan,
thank you.
Yeah, what do you got for us this week?
So actually, I don't have music. So I texted this to you guys in the group message. You guys heard of the NBA Shot, right?
No.
Okay, so just to update like the fans or if people haven't heard of it, is I just heard about it on Friday. It's a platform where you can trade virtual NBA cards. And I know that sounds so stupid, but I looked into it and it's really really cool, and I'm super excited about it. So I'm gonna buy a couple virtual cards this week, and it combines my two very loving two loves in my life, some Bitcoin blockchain with with the NBA. So yeah, I'm gonna buy some cards this week, and I'm really excited about it.
I don't understand its association with Bitcoin.
Oh, it's not. I mean, they use blockchain to
as the currency to buy them, or what?
No. Use blockchain for the actual
You're buying a moment. That's what you're doing.
Yeah. But the
it's virtual too.
Yeah, but each moment is built on like blockchain. So then it's it is what it is. It's rare, and you can verify that it's a legitimate moment. And that's how they tote the scarcity of the product and how they tote how it's valuable. So
hopefully the company selling them doesn't go under.
Oh, it's sponsored by NBA. So I actually think
yeah, okay. I guess I didn't know that. I thought it was a private entity.
Oh, it is, but it is endorsed, and then I'm not sure if funded, but I know they're endorsed by the NBA. So it's actually partially through the NBA.
So who you buying?
God,
the LeBron James block.
Zach LaVine?
Oh, not LaVine. LeBron James block. LeBron James is too expensive right now. I'm thinking about buying a Zion one because I love Zion. I'm gonna bet low on Anthony Edwards stock right now and buy one of his. His are actually expensive for
at least what they are. Pick.
Yeah, I know, but it's crazy. There's a LeBron James card that's sold for $71,000. It's actually blown up in the last week, but it's interesting. And at first I thought it was really stupid, but now I can see the value, and I just love the NBA, so I'll probably just buy a couple just for fun.
Well, I just seen, so just speaking of trading cards in general, I think there was just some mint Mickey Mantle rookie card that I think just ended up selling for $4.3 million or something really recently. So
the card market's going crazy.
Crazy, yeah.
It's going crazy, and then obviously there's a huge Bitcoin community. So if you combine those two things, it could go crazy too. So.
All right.
Yeah, 5.2 million was the
5.2
or J2. Yep.
Dear God.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
You got to have some expendable income to spend 5.2 on a baseball card, but.
Oh, no question.
I'd
it's
probably
not
cap
you have 6 million in your name and you're spending 5.2 on a baseball card.
I'd probably cap my spending limit at about $52, so that's just insane. But all right, Sam, what are you doing?
For me, it's I kind of just alluded to it.
Losing some more parlays.
Oh yeah, I got a bunch today that I'm gonna get in on with the NBA and the NFL. Watch football all day. I'm really looking forward to these two games. I think two great games. I'm just looking. I see per sources, Tanner Borgen was the source actually, that Winfield might be out for the Bucks, so that's a bummer. But either way, I'm looking forward to two. I think will be great games. Obviously, I'm going to have some money on the line. I'm really hoping the outcome isn't the Packers-Chiefs Super Bowl. When you think about it, your guys' rivals, the Packers, mine's the Chiefs. It's the two worst teams that we could. Yeah, worst case scenario. So I think in that case, you'd obviously be rooting for the Chiefs. I'd be rooting for the Packers. Let's hope that doesn't happen. I'd love to see the Bills come through today. I don't know. Mahomes is playing with a turf toe. I don't know how much that will affect him. Probably limit his mobility a little bit. I imagine he'll still be himself in the passing game. I'm really excited to see how Josh Allen shows up today. Biggest game of his career. He's been playing lights out the last month and a half of the season. So I'm really hoping he shows up, balls out today. Rooting for Diggs, rooting for Beasley, John Brown, all those guys. big time on the Bills today. And then on the other side, I'm kind of mixed. I more of a, obviously you guys are not Packers fans, so I apologize for this take, but I really like Rodgers and like how I just love his attitude this year and how he's having fun going out there playing loose. And I just like great players. I've always said that he's one of the best quarterbacks that I've ever seen play. So from the other side though, the Gophers players, Tyler Johnson, Antoine Winfield, excited to watch them. Hopefully Winfield's out there. If not, then it's kind of a bummer. But I like the Packers in that one, so I'm hoping we get a Packers-Bills Super Bowl. Either way, I'll be happy though if the Bucs get in there. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing today. Hopefully, if all else fails, we just get a couple of really good games that we can watch. So yeah.
Yeah, obviously I wouldn't root for the Packers either way, but and I've never been like a huge like Tom Brady fan just because I've never really liked like the Empire like dynasties in sports, but it would be like a pretty sweet sort of cap on his legacy to just like leave that relationship with Bill Belichick, just randomly join the Bucs who like haven't been in the playoffs for like 15 years or something, and then just like lead them to a Super Bowl would be kind of insane. But
yeah, and then a couple things to note: no Antonio Brown, Winfield, like Tanner just mentioned, questionable. So it's coming down to like Godwin's and Evans. Ronald Jones seems to be a go. Fournette. I think it'll be really fun to watch. If Brady gets back to a Super Bowl, man, that's just crazy. Like, and then what's coming to mind is the regular season game between the Bucs and the Packers. If you guys remember that, I think it was in Tampa. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. But Bucs just absolutely kicked them. Like Packers, that was their worst game of the year. So I don't think that will be the case this time. I actually expect the Packers to win. But if there's anything to that, and maybe it's some sort of matchup problem, it could be interesting to watch if the Bucs come out in the first quarter and kind of like dominate that first quarter. Packers could be in like a lot of trouble. So it'll be interesting to see that as well. But like as you were kind of mentioning, JT, if he can like after the post Belichick go to the Bucs and get right back to the Super Bowl, I mean, he's the GOAT. There's no other thing to say about it.
Well put. All right. Well, I don't have a whole lot going on except that I'm basically just sitting around trying to keep, an infant baby as happy as I can for the most part. So mostly we just been watching TV. We just wrapped up. I don't know if you guys read the books like in middle school, but there's a Alex Rider series that's on Amazon Prime right now. It's actually pretty good. I liked it a lot. So if you're looking for something to watch, you can give that a shot too. Otherwise, I did want to call out. So we had a brand new intro for the show today, and if you're wondering what that song was, because we did get a copyright claim on it, so I wanted to mention that. But that's a shout out to Run the Jewels, and the song is No Save Point, which is from a video game called Cyberpunk 2077, which just came out. Which, if anybody's looking for a game to play, I think they're trying to better their launch right now. But one thing I got some press for early on was that it's got like a fully customizable like main character, and you can customize their genitals. So if you're really looking for the full experience, you can give it a go.
Hey, shout out Killer Mike, shout out LP, Run the Jewels.
Is this now a Run the Jewels podcast, or is this still Young Thug?
They're in my top 5 for artists I love. So
we might have to lean Run the Jewels if we're gonna keep using them in our intro. So
I'm officially declaring this a Taylor Swift podcast.
Oh dear God, no. Motion to not allow that.
I was really bummed when I heard the intro was great. Don't get me wrong, JT. Well done. But I was really bummed when the tune or the jingle did not involve Taylor Swift. So that's all I got to say.
I can't imagine that.
At least it wasn't Little Thug or whatever his name is that Dylan likes.
You sound so old.
I don't even care. I am getting old. Not as old as JT, but I'm getting old.
Oh, that's fair.
Sorry, JT.
No, I understand. All right. Well,
you brought it up yesterday. So.
Yeah. Well, I had that realization, and I felt just like I was in a pit of despair. So I don't know what else I can do with it at this point.
You're still in your prime, JT.
Well, barely. Physically, not. Mentally, I'm just getting there.
We'll see how you perform in a month at the Open.
Oh yeah, we'll see how the golf game looks, but. All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up. This has been another episode of RoundballRadio, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time.
See you guys.
Peace.